I always thought our neighbor Susan was just a little intense, loud, showy, and obsessed with appearances, but I never expected to uncover what I did. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I told people right away. I lost sleep. And now, a year later, she's back, asking me to clear her name. Let me take you back. I was in charge of organizing the neighborhood's Halloween trick-or-treat route. I told the parents, let your kids wear whatever they want, as long as it's comfortable for walking. I even shared some fun Pinterest ideas. It was supposed to be a sweet, unforgettable night for the kids. But deep down, I hoped one parent wouldn't show up. Not because of the child, who was actually lovely, but because of the mom, Susan. She was the type to insult a waiter for forgetting a straw, who thought parenting was secondary to contouring, and who once told me I should skip meals if I wanted my husband to stick around. Charming, right? The night before Halloween, I got a call from her. She said she and her daughter Susie wouldn't be coming. It was too far to walk. I told her that was fine and was about to cross her name off the list when she added, you know, not everyone needs that kind of workout. Just because you do. Her tone? Cold. Condescending. I forced a professional smile into my voice and said, well, everyone's got their preferences, before hanging up. Problem solved, or so I thought. Halloween arrives. I'm doing a final head count when a car pulls into my driveway. Out steps Susan, in a costume I can only describe as wildly inappropriate. And next to her, little Susie, dressed in an identical outfit, only tighter. I was speechless. Then Susan smirked and snapped, eyes up here! Some of us actually have something to show. That's when Susie tugged on her mom's arm and whispered, Mom, I don't feel comfortable. Susan bent down and replied, pain is beauty. You'll understand one day. That's when I had enough. I ran inside, grabbed one of my daughter's old costumes, and offered it to Susie. Susan tried to block me, but I looked her dead in the eye and said, if you make your daughter feel like this in front of me again, I will say something in front of the entire group. That shut her down. As we started our walk, Susan stayed way at the back, too busy chatting up every dad who walked by, married or not. And then it got worse. I overheard her joke to a group of men that Susie was hotter than half the moms here. And Susie? She mimicked her mother's every move, flipping her hair, giggling on cue, acting like she'd done it 100 times before. Later, I caught Susan cozying up to one of the dads across the street, telling him how perfect he and her daughter would be together. His son looked about 11. Susie was nearly 16. My stomach turned. I made a few subtle comments about how Susan has a husband, just loud enough for the dad to hear. He backed off quickly. That night, as I was packing up, Susie ran up to me, angry. Why did you do that? I almost had another boyfriend, she yelled. Another? I asked what she meant. And what she said made my heart stop. Mommy told me my last boyfriend got divorced, so I'm single again. I could barely breathe. How old was he? I asked. I don't know, like 30? He used to buy me earrings every day. Before I could respond, Susan stormed over and pulled her daughter away. And that's the moment I knew. I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. She yanked Susie away so hard the poor girl stumbled. For a moment, I just stood there, completely stunned. My brain was trying to catch up. Had I really just heard that? A grown man in his 30s buying jewelry for a little girl? And her mom casually calling him her daughter's boyfriend? I felt sick. Susan started dragging Susie toward their car, but I wasn't about to let this slide. I followed them, caught up in my own driveway, and stepped in front of them, blocking the path. Susan glared at me, full of rage, and said if I didn't move, she'd call the police. I told her to go ahead. Maybe the officers would be interested in hearing about the 30-something boyfriend buying gifts for her daughter. That made her pause, but only for a second. Then she let out this high-pitched fake laugh that gave me goosebumps. You're overreacting, she said. Kids say silly things. I glanced at Susie. She wasn't saying anything. Her shoulders were pulled up to her ears, her eyes fixed on the ground. She looked so small in that tight costume. I asked her gently if she was okay. Susan answered for her. Of course she's fine. Mind your own business. But I didn't. I crouched a little and told Susie she could talk to me if something felt off. That I was here if she needed help. That's when I saw Susan's grip on her daughter's arm tighten. Her knuckles were turning white. Just then, my husband Christopher came outside. He'd been putting our kids to bed. One look at the situation and he was by my side in seconds. I gave him the rundown while Susan stood there seething. When I got to the part about the boyfriend, I saw his jaw clench. Christopher's usually calm, but not this time. He turned to Susan and said, "You need to explain, right now." She rolled her eyes, said it was all just a misunderstanding. "It's just a little crush," she claimed. "Kids get them all the time. It was harmless." But when I asked about the jewelry, her story started to shift. "He was just being nice," she said. "He felt bad because Susie's dad isn't around. He's like an uncle." Christopher wasn't buying it, and neither was I. "Uncles don't buy daily gifts for little girls they aren't related to," he said. "And they definitely don't get called boyfriends." Her version changed again. "She just calls him that," Susan insisted. "She doesn't understand what it means." But Susie had said he got divorced, and now she was single. That's not a phrase a little girl invents by accident. Susan's face turned red. "You're the ones with the twisted minds," she snapped. Christopher pulled out his phone. "Then I guess child services can clear it up." That got her attention. Instantly, her tone flipped, from angry to panicked. She begged us not to call anyone. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "I'm a single mom. I need help sometimes. You're blowing this out of proportion. Please, the whole neighborhood will talk." I told her I didn't care about gossip. I cared about Susie. Susan's eyes welled up. But it didn't feel real. It felt like a performance. "You're ruining my life," she cried. "Over nothing." Through it all, Susie stayed silent. I knelt down again. Asked if she wanted to come inside for a hot drink while the grown-ups talked. Susan flipped. She practically screamed no, pulling Susie behind her like I was some kind of threat. "Touch my kid again and I'll sue you," she shouted. "I know my rights. You can't take my child." Meanwhile, Christopher was still on the phone talking quietly. I couldn't hear the details, but Susan could feel it slipping out of her hands. Her mood swung wildly, 1 second threats, the next desperate begging. Then she crossed a line. She said she'd tell everyone I was inappropriate with Susie, that I gave her a different costume just to watch her change, that I was the one with bad intentions. I laughed, out loud. The accusation was so absurd it didn't even deserve a response. There were 20 parents there when I offered that costume. Everyone saw how Susan dressed her daughter. But logic wasn't going to stop her. She was spiraling. "You're obsessed with us," she shouted. "You've always been jealous. Just admit it. You want my life." Christopher ended his call and calmly told her, "Someone from child services will be visiting tomorrow. You and Susie will both be interviewed." Susan went ghost white, and then, still dragging Susie behind her, she backed toward her car. Susie winced as Susan's perfectly manicured nails dug into her shoulder. I stepped aside. At this point, there was no need to stop them physically. Christopher had already made the call. The authorities would take it from here. Susan shoved her daughter into the back seat like luggage and peeled out of our driveway, tires screeching so loudly the smell of burnt rubber lingered. Christopher and I just stood there, frozen in the silence that followed. No words, just the weight of what we'd witnessed. That kind of quiet. The kind that shows up right before everything changes. Back inside, I tried to make tea, but my hands were shaking too hard to hold the kettle. Christopher rubbed my shoulders, but my body wouldn't relax. My thoughts were stuck in a loop. By morning, my phone was full. Over 50 messages. I hadn't heard it buzz overnight. Exhaustion had knocked me out cold. But the neighborhood? Wide awake. Word had spread fast. Some messages were from concerned parents asking what had happened. Others, they were confessions. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd felt something was off. Grace, who lives a few doors down, told me that Susan once asked her husband to babysit. Just him and Susie. But the outfit Susan sent her daughter in? A crop top and mini skirt on a 6-year-old. Her husband had refused. Susan told him he must not like girls. Grace never forgot it. Another mom, Maria, remembered Susan showing up to her son's birthday party. But instead of letting Susie play with the other kids, Susan spent the whole time taking photos of her posing with the dads. Just the men. Not a single shot with kids. And the stories kept coming. Susan holding fashion shows for her male friends. Teaching Susie to sit on men's laps at barbecues. Telling her daughter that looking pretty was more important than being smart. Piece by piece, it all started to form a much darker picture. Everyone had seen something, but no one had connected the dots. As I was scrolling through the messages, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Susan. Alone. No Susie. She was dressed in jeans and a sweater. No lashes, no lipstick, no heels. She looked normal. Tired. Her voice, when she spoke through the door, was quieter than I'd ever heard it. She said she wanted to explain, that I had misunderstood everything, that she'd been thinking all night about how to make me see things differently. She sounded calmer, almost reasonable, but I wasn't opening that door. I told her to speak through it. She sighed, then started talking anyway. She said she'd had Susie when she was just 19, that the father left right away, that she'd had no help, just her and the baby, barely getting by. 2 jobs, no family, no support system. She said she'd made some bad choices, dated men who helped pay bills, let them give Susie gifts. But she swore she'd never let anyone hurt her daughter. She loved Susie more than anything. She was just trying to survive in a world that didn't care about women like her. It almost sounded believable. Heartbreaking even. Maybe a year ago I would have believed her. But after what I'd seen and heard, I wasn't falling for it. I told her she needed to speak to child services. That maybe they could actually get her the help she needed. That's when the mask dropped. Her voice went cold, flat. She said I was making a huge mistake, that I didn't know who I was messing with, that she had connections, that she could make things very, very hard for me. I said I was recording our conversation. I wasn't, but she didn't know that. There was a long silence. Then she laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "No one's going to believe you," she said. "You're just a bored housewife playing detective." And just like that, she was gone. Except she wasn't. She sat in her car outside for several minutes before finally driving off. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. That afternoon, I started getting strange friend requests. From men I didn't recognize. Their profiles were mostly blank. Few photos, barely any friends. At first I ignored them. Then the messages started. Nothing overtly threatening, just off. Comments about my looks, questions about whether I was single. One man even said he heard about me from a friend. Another sent a photo of my house. I blocked them all and locked down every profile I had, but it didn't stop. The next morning I found a note on my windshield. Sloppy handwriting. Just a few words. "Be careful. Accidents happen. Think about your kids." I went straight to the police. The officer said they'd look into it, but without direct proof that the threats were from Susan, there wasn't much they could do. He sounded bored, like it was just some neighbor drama, not a serious threat to my safety. Christopher didn't wait. That weekend we installed security cameras around the house. It turned out to be the right move. Late Sunday night, the cameras caught someone sneaking through our backyard. The footage was grainy, but you could clearly see a figure trying to peek into our windows. They stayed out there for nearly 20 minutes before finally leaving. It sent chills down my spine. Then Monday morning, Child Protective Services showed up at Susan's house. I know because she sent me a barrage of texts, angry, frantic, full of typos and blame. According to her, I'd ruined her life, traumatized Susie, and made her the target of strangers asking questions. I didn't respond. I just screenshot every message, saved them with dates and times. Christopher said I might be overreacting, but something told me I'd need those receipts later. I was right. Tuesday, things escalated. I was at the grocery store when I noticed a man trailing me, keeping just one aisle behind wherever I went. I recognized his face from one of those weird friend requests I'd gotten days earlier. Same photo, same vibe. He pretended to shop, put things in his cart, but never once looked at them. His eyes were on me the entire time. I left my cart and walked straight to my car. He followed. Didn't approach, just stayed close. I took a winding, erratic route home, checking my mirrors the whole way, heart racing. As soon as I got through the door, I called Christopher. Just hearing his voice calmed me down. Barely. Then I saw it. A note taped to our front door. This time it wasn't handwritten. It was typed. Plain font, plain paper. Just one sentence. "You've been warned. Next time, we won't be so nice." I called the police again. Same story. No fingerprints, no cameras caught the delivery, no threat they could act on. Just my word. I could tell they were getting tired of hearing from me. Christopher was furious. He wanted to confront Susan face to face. I begged him not to. We didn't know what we were dealing with or who she might be working with. This wasn't just about her anymore. She wasn't backing off. She was getting bolder. Susan started showing up everywhere she knew I'd be. The park where I took the kids, my favorite coffee shop, my yoga class, always right there, smiling, smirking, waving like we were old friends. Once she even bought my coffee before I could. slid it across the counter with a grin that sent a chill down my spine. Other moms noticed. They started asking if something was going on. When I told them the full story, the stalking, the notes, the creepy men, most believed me. They'd always sensed something strange about her. But not everyone was on my side. Jean, a mom known for keeping the peace, said I should have handled things privately. That calling child services was too much. That I was making everyone uncomfortable and ruining the vibe of the neighborhood, as if the vibe mattered more than a child's safety. A few others agreed. They stopped talking to me at school pickup, whispered behind my back, avoided eye contact. It hurt more than I expected. And then Susan took it further. She started spreading rumors, told people I was cheating on Christopher, said we were headed for divorce, claimed I was projecting my own issues onto her. The lies caught on fast, faster than I could stop them. Whispers turned into questions. Some people believed it. Then the worst part, my kids started hearing it. Isabella came home and asked why her friend's mom said I was a bad person. My son Daniel wanted to know if Daddy was moving out. They were confused, worried, and I was heartbroken. Susan had crossed a line. She was using my children to hurt me. I sat them down and told them gently that sometimes adults have disagreements, that our home was safe, that Mommy and Daddy were okay. But I could see the doubt in their eyes. The seed of confusion had been planted. Isabella started clinging to me at school. Daniel stopped inviting friends over. Christopher was ready to go nuclear. He wanted to lawyer up, get a restraining order. But the legal fees? Way beyond our budget. And what if we lost? What if she turned it around, filed something against us? We couldn't risk it. Not with college savings, not with 2 kids depending on us. We tried to stay out of her way, hoping she'd eventually get bored and move on. But Susan wasn't the kind of person who lets go. She doubled down. That's when she started dating Harold, one of the neighborhood dads. His wife had recently left, and he was still reeling. Susan saw an opportunity and took it. Soon Harold was wrapped around her finger. Now she had someone to defend her, publicly. At school events, Harold would speak up for her, loudly telling anyone who'd listen that Susan was a great mom, that people were being unfair to her, that I was just jealous and looking for attention. You could see it in his eyes. He was hooked. The worst part? Watching Susie through all of this. Her eyes had changed. That spark kids usually have? Gone. Whenever I saw her, she looked like she wanted to say something, but Susan was always nearby, watching, hovering, silently pulling her back into line. Child Services was still investigating. It had already been weeks. When I called to check in, they just said, "These things take time." They couldn't share details. I wanted to scream. Every day they stalled was another day Susie was at risk. And then came the birthday party. Daniel's classmate was turning 7. Huge celebration at the park. Bounce houses, balloons, face paint, the whole thing. We weren't planning to go because we knew Susan would be there. But Daniel begged. All his friends were going. He didn't understand the deeper reasons behind our hesitation. So we went. I stayed far from Susan, keeping a close eye on my kids. Everything seemed fine for the first hour, until I realized I hadn't seen Susie in a while. Susan, meanwhile, was chatting with Harold, her hand on his arm, laughing like everything was perfect. I found Susie behind the bathroom building, sitting on the ground, crying. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, grass stains on her knees. When I asked what happened, she said she fell, but her voice trembled. Her eyes flicked side to side, like she was scared someone might overhear. I helped her clean up, gave her a few bandages from my purse, and quietly told her she could talk to me if she ever needed to. For a second, I thought she might. She opened her mouth, then quickly shut it. That's when Susan appeared. Her entire expression shifted the moment she saw us. She stormed over, grabbed Susie's arm, and yanked her away. Then she began screaming, loud enough for everyone at the party to hear. She accused me of trying to lure her daughter away, called me obsessed, said I was unstable. People gathered. Phones came out. The birthday boy started crying from the chaos. I tried to explain calmly that Susie had been hurt, that I was just helping. But Susan wasn't having it. She twisted everything. Harold rushed in to back her up, claiming he'd seen me watching Susie all day. A total lie. The parents at the party split down the middle. Some were clearly uncomfortable, others were actually taking her side. The mom hosting the party begged us all to leave. Her son's birthday ended in tears and confusion. In the parking lot, as Susan passed by, she leaned close and whispered, "This is just the beginning. By the time I'm done, no one will believe a word you say." That night, all 4 of my car's tires were slashed. Our cameras caught a hooded figure. No face, no ID. The police said it could have been anyone. Christopher had to miss work to help me deal with it. Even the tow truck driver said vandalism in the area had been increasing. I didn't tell him what I suspected. Then came the hang-up calls, the unwanted food deliveries, the flood of spam emails. Someone even called our kids' school pretending to be me, saying I was picking them up early. Thank God the secretary knew me well enough to realize something was off. I was exhausted, on edge, jumping at every noise. My health was starting to unravel. Christopher was worried. He said maybe we should just disengage. Let child services take it from here. That continuing to challenge Susan was doing more harm than good. But I couldn't. Not with Susie still in that house. Not when I was starting to dream about her crying behind that bathroom building. Then, something shifted. Maria called me one night. She sounded nervous, but determined. She said she couldn't stop thinking about what she'd seen, what she now realized she'd ignored for too long. And she wanted to help. We met for coffee the next morning, and what she showed me changed everything. Old social media posts, from before Susan moved into our neighborhood. Photos of Susie at just 3 years old, wearing full makeup, adult-style clothes, posing with grown men Maria didn't recognize. Captions referring to them as boyfriends. It made my stomach turn. Maria and I looked at each other. We didn't even need to say it. We were going to document everything. Maria and I weren't alone for long. She quietly reached out to a few other moms, women who, like us, had seen too much to keep pretending everything was fine. Grace, Julia, Michelle. Each of them carried pieces of the same dark puzzle. We began meeting in secret, like some kind of suburban task force, sharing stories, matching timelines, comparing notes. And the more we talked, the clearer the picture became. Susan had been manipulating her daughter since she was a toddler, teaching her how to flirt, how to pose, how to treat male attention as currency. It was more than disturbing. It was calculated. She wasn't just a bad parent. She was using her own child to attract and keep men. We gathered everything: screenshots, messages, timestamps, written statements. The stack grew thick, and that's when Maria had an idea. Her sister worked in child services in the next county. Maybe she could give us advice on how to make sure this didn't fall through the cracks again. When Maria's sister saw our folder, her face changed. Her words were sharp. "This is abuse, and someone should have stepped in by now." She gave us detailed guidance. What legal language to use, how to follow up properly, and who to call when the caseworker stops answering. She even gave us the name of a supervisor who actually listened. Armed with that, I made another call. But this time I was ready. I used the exact phrases Maria's sister gave me, quoted the right statutes, asked directly for the supervisor, and suddenly the tone changed. Now they were listening. The supervisor promised to personally review the file. She was concerned by the delay, said someone would follow up within 48 hours. It was the first real progress in weeks. But Susan must have sensed something was shifting, because everything escalated. It wasn't just me anymore. Maria started receiving threatening texts. Grace found a dead bird on her front steps. Julia's husband got anonymous emails accusing her of cheating. It was coordinated. It was personal. But it wasn't enough to scare us. If anything, it only made us stronger. We decided to fight back. Smart, legal, and thoroughly documented. Step 1. Every threat, every strange message, every incident, we reported all of it. We didn't care if the police were annoyed. We created a record, a paper trail. The front desk officer even started greeting us by name. Step 2, more security cameras. We shared footage. If Susan showed up at the park, someone sent a group text. If she trailed someone on a walk, we had witnesses. We watched each other's backs. Step 3, we reached out to Harold's ex-wife. Turns out, she left him because of Susan. She'd seen red flags too. She had her own stories, her own fears about Susie. She joined us right away, and her insight into Harold's behavior added another disturbing layer to the whole situation. And the pressure was working. Susan couldn't make a move without someone noticing. Couldn't say a word without it being documented. Child services brought her in for multiple interviews. Harold started to pull away. You could see the stress catching up to her. Then she slipped up, and it changed everything. She sent me an email from her real address. No burner account, no aliases, just Susan. In it, she ranted about how I'd ruined her life. Then, shockingly, she admitted to what we'd all feared, that Susie was her way to survive. that men paid good money to spend time with a pretty little girl. It was vile, chilling, and she'd put it in writing. I couldn't believe it, but I didn't hesitate. I forwarded that email to the police, child services, and a lawyer friend within minutes. My hands were shaking as I hit send. Everything changed after that. That afternoon, officers showed up at Susan's house. Child services removed Susie immediately. Susan was arrested. Harold was brought in for questioning. For the first time in weeks, the neighborhood felt still. But it wasn't over. Not really. Susie was placed in foster care while officials searched for relatives. Susan, somehow, made bail, and when she did, she went right back to blaming everyone but herself. Harold broke things off and pretended he'd never stood up for her. Some neighbors still whispered that I had caused all the drama, that I'd gone too far. It hurt. It was exhausting, and it wasn't even close to finished. Because Susan had a lawyer now, a slick, smiling man named Billy, who was just getting started. 2 days after Susan's arrest, her lawyer showed up at my door. He tried to serve me papers, some kind of defamation claim, I think. But I didn't even bother reading them. I passed them straight to my friend who worked at a law firm. She took one look and said it was all scare tactics. Pure nonsense. Susan was desperate to silence me. That same week, I got a message from the foster family caring for Susie. They reached out through child services, asking if I had any of Susie's belongings. Apparently, Susan had destroyed most of her daughter's regular clothes when she was arrested. All that was left were those inappropriate outfits. So I packed up the Halloween costume I'd given her, plus a few of Isabella's old clothes I thought might fit, and dropped them off. And that's when I got to see Susie again. She looked like a kid for once. Her hair was in simple pigtails. She wore jeans and a dinosaur t-shirt. When she saw me, she smiled. A real, genuine smile. The first I'd seen from her in what felt like forever. Her foster mom, Oakley, seemed kind, calm, grounded. She told me Susie had been asking about me, wondering if I was okay. That little girl, after everything she'd been through, was still worried about me. It broke me a little. Oakley said Susie was going to therapy twice a week. Slowly, she was beginning to understand that what her mom had done wasn't normal. That love wasn't supposed to come with conditions. Meanwhile, Susan was spiraling. She began posting wild rants online, accusing the government of stealing her child, claiming I was part of a conspiracy, insisting the entire world was jealous of her looks and success. The post got more unhinged every day. People screenshotted everything before she could delete it. Harold somehow tried to worm his way back into the neighborhood like none of it had happened. He even showed up at the community BBQ like it was just another weekend. But no one wanted him there. Grace's husband straight up told him to leave. Harold played the victim, saying Susan had manipulated him, but no one believed that anymore. Then Susan made her most reckless move yet. She showed up at Susie's school. In the middle of recess, she just walked in and tried to grab her daughter, to take off like nothing was wrong. But the school had been warned. The staff was ready. The building went into lockdown. Police arrived in minutes. Susan screamed about her rights as a mother as they handcuffed her in front of terrified children. Susie had been hiding in the principal's office. She didn't come out until her mom was gone. The security footage said it all. That was the final straw. Susan's bail was revoked. The judge ruled she was both a flight risk and a danger to her child. And then, like clockwork, her parents surfaced. They lived 2 states away and hadn't seen Susie in years. But now they wanted custody. Child services ran the background checks. Her father, Anthony, had a long history of inappropriate behavior. Her mother, Jean, had stayed with him anyway. There was no way they were getting near Susie. The cycle ended there. But for us, it wasn't really over. Our neighborhood group turned into something more. Maria wrote guidelines on recognizing signs of child exploitation. Julia launched a private parent forum to share concerns safely. We turned trauma into something useful, something powerful. Susan's trial moved slowly. Her lawyer filed motion after motion trying to get evidence tossed out, claiming we'd invaded her privacy. The prosecutor wasn't worried. She said the case was solid. Still, waiting was hard. I testified at a preliminary hearing. Susan stared at me the entire time like she thought she could still intimidate me. She couldn't. I told the court everything I'd seen. The costume incident, the boyfriend comment, the stalking, the threats, the whole awful story. By the time I was done, the judge looked visibly disturbed. Then came Maria's testimony. She spoke about the old social media photos, Susie in makeup, posing with grown men. Grace explained the fashion shows. Julia described how Susan taught her daughter to sit on men's laps at barbecues. One by one, the pieces fell into place. Susan's lawyer objected over and over, but it didn't matter. Then came the email. Her confession. It was read out loud in court. Her exact words, her name on the account. Her lawyer claimed she was being sarcastic, that it was taken out of context. But the jury wasn't buying it. For the first time, Susan cried. Real tears, the kind that come when denial stops working. While the trial played out, Susie continued to grow into herself. Oakley sent occasional updates through child services. Susie had joined a soccer team. She was making friends, laughing, eating ice cream, wearing whatever clothes she wanted. Christmas was hard. I couldn't stop thinking about her, spending the holidays without her mother. Even if that mother had been a source of pain, she was still all Susie had known. I asked Oakley if I could send presents. She said yes. So Isabella and I picked out books, puzzles, warm clothes, simple things, normal things. Susan's trial finally began in February. By then, she'd spent months behind bars. She didn't look like the woman who used to strut through the school parking lot in heels and designer sunglasses. She looked small, and the truth was finally catching up to her. When Susan walked into the courtroom for her trial, she looked completely different. Thinner, pale, dressed in a plain, ill-fitting suit that her lawyer probably picked out for her. No makeup, no flashy jewelry. She almost looked like any other person. Almost. But her eyes still had that same calculating coldness. The prosecution laid out their case with precision. Text messages arranging meetings, financial records showing strange payments from men, photos from Susan's own phone that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. It was overwhelming. Susan's defense? Weak. Her lawyer painted her as a struggling single mom who'd made poor choices, insisting the men were just friends, that no one had ever actually harmed Susie, that we had all misunderstood. But no one in that room bought it. Then came the detective's testimony. He'd interviewed several of the men Susan had been involved with. Most claimed they thought they were just helping out, offering financial support to a single mother. But a few admitted Susan had hinted they could spend time alone with Susie, for a price. She hadn't just failed her daughter, she was preparing to sell her. The room was silent. Then Susan made a mistake. She took the stand. The prosecutor didn't hold back. Every lie Susan told was dismantled, every contradiction exposed. By the end, she was crying, blaming her parents, the system, me, anyone but herself. The jury didn't need long. Less than 2 hours later, they came back, guilty on all counts: child endangerment, solicitation, fraud. The list was long. Susan's face went blank as the verdict was read, like she truly believed she might walk away from it all. Like reality had just hit. A month later, at sentencing, the judge gave her 15 years. He told her she'd betrayed the most sacred trust, turning her daughter into a commodity, that she'd show no remorse. When she screamed and had to be removed from the courtroom, I didn't flinch. That part of my life was over. But Susie's future was just beginning. Child Services started the process to find her a permanent home. Her foster family, Oakley and her partner, wanted to adopt her. But as always, there was paperwork, court reviews, and background checks. Still, Susie was safe. I kept in touch with Oakley through it all. I went to Susie's soccer games when I could. She was blossoming, laughing, playing, learning. She started calling Oakley Mom. It was beautiful to watch. The adoption went through just before summer. Our neighborhood healed too, slowly. The moms who'd once defended Susan came to me. Some apologized. Others just stayed quiet. Harold moved away. New families moved in, never knowing what we'd all lived through. Things returned to a new kind of normal. And yet, I still think about it. About how close Susan came to destroying her daughter. About how many of us had to fight to protect one little girl. About how broken the system felt. About how easily this could have ended differently. But then I remember Susie. Last week I ran into them at the grocery store. Susie ran straight into my arms, beaming, told me about her new bike. Her best friend, Charlie, how she was learning to swim. Just regular kid stuff. Exactly the way it should be. Oakley gave me a smile and said thank you again. Told me Susie was still in therapy but doing better than anyone expected. As for Susan, she's in prison. Won't be eligible for parole for at least 7 more years. She still sends letters, long, rambling, delusional, to me, to Maria, to anyone she can blame. We don't read them anymore. We send them straight to the police. She has no power over us now, no power over Susie. Our neighborhood still does trick-or-treating every year. I still organize it. But now we've got better safety rules. Background checks, buddy systems, clear costume guidelines. This year, Susie came dressed as a superhero. Cape, mask, the whole thing. She ran through the streets laughing, gathering candy with her friends, being exactly what she is now, a happy, free 6-year-old girl. Oakley walked with the other parents, talking about school lunches and weekend plans, like it was just another October evening, like the darkness had finally lifted. And maybe it had. I know this sounds like something out of a bad movie, but it happened. Right here, in a quiet little neighborhood, with people we thought we knew. It taught me to trust my instincts, to speak up, to protect children even when it's hard, even when people roll their eyes. Because sometimes, ordinary people really can stop something terrible. And for one little girl, that made all the difference. So yeah, that's my story. The crazy, terrifying, unforgettable story of how we saved Susie. If you're still listening, thank you. Hug your kids extra tight tonight. And if you ever see something that doesn't feel right, say something. You might save a life.